Hey, it's Bill DeYoung. It's the Catalyst Sessions. Happy Friday. I'm really happy to bring a friend of mine onto the show tonight, someone that you know very well and you love. His name is Ronny Elliott, and he has been on the music scene in Tampa Bay for a very long time. And you know him, you love him. And at this point in time, I'm just going to pass it over to him because he's going to start the show for us. Hey, Ron, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
I'm getting there tonight. It's actually a weekend, and I got a bottle of wine waiting for me as soon as we're done.
Oh,
here.
Good.
So take it away. So I'm sorry, what?
I said I approve.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. What do you want? You want to play something for us, man?
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, what do you got? Cool, man.
Hope fades.
Nice optimistic way to start the show.
Yeah.
All right.
It did fade. It's gone now. You got the king of broken hearts and a heartbroken king. There's a line that separates them and it hardly means a thing. Scarlet Riders reading aloud the purple prose along a road out of Memphis we call the overdose. Haunted by tragedy, driven by desire, two hearts full of song, souls full of fire. Got a mother load of music from a volunteer state, fighting dirty, talking physics to illuminate what the poets of the war show the boys of music row, painting purple mountains fuchsia everywhere they go. Alcohol and dope, great hopes gone wrong, hillbilly hearts full of fire, soul in the song. Rock and roll hearts beating 4/4 time. Hope fades, truth balances in the name of the rhyme. With the sons of fortune knocking on the doors of desire, haunted by the tragedy and scorched by the fire, rare and elusive American point of view, spilling the blood of Arabia in the Paris Review. All the beautiful losers from the heart of the South, Western boots on their feet, gold teeth in their mouth. All the masters of photography are praying for war, and the radio programmers are flattened by the score. They got the tastemakers taking odds over periwinkle blue. Either this wallpaper goes, or by God I do. You stand for the ones who need your help, and you know it, with the heart of the warrior and the soul of the poet. Rock and roll hearts beating 4/4 time. Hope fades, truth balances in the name of the rhyme. Hurt, hope, politics, battleground states. You got the possum on the bottle on stage with the shakes. The king's on the throne where he fell from the throne. I'm watching from the swamp and I'm chilled to the bone. This stuff I'm doing's not real and I know it. Invitation from Clovis. I'm about to blow it. Rock and roll hearts beating 4/4 time. Hope fades, truth balances in the name of the rhyme. Trading on your name for the sake of crime. Grace fades in the face of karma every time. Rock and roll hearts 4/4 time.
Beautiful, beautiful. You do remind me so much of Townes Van Zandt, man.
Thank you.
Soulfulness in the way you write and you sing. Listen, you're from Alabama originally. You sort of landed in Tampa, what, around mid-50s when you were a little kid?
Yeah, I was in the first grade. I was 6 years old, I guess. I've always told the story that that we moved to Florida because I wanted to. You know, the single mother and the kid talked her into it. And it's only been in the last 4 or 5 years that I have figured out that my mother played me. You know, it was she used the kid to get to Florida. Like, well, you know, the kid wants to move where the beaches are and palm trees sway. So,
well, so what's the Elvis connection there? I've heard you talk about your mom and Elvis. Tell me that story.
I mean, it's a loose connection. The first connection is that my mother was an information operator at it was Peninsula Telephone then, before it became General Telephone and then Verizon. But yeah. A young girl who worked there with my mother was the president of the Elvis Presley fan club. The Elvis Presley fan club is all that was.
In Tampa.
Yeah, in Tampa. I mean, not the Tampa branch. It was the only fan club there was.
And the world just gets smaller all the time.
Yeah. Well, it was particularly small then for Elvis Presley. And so when Elvis would play the shows here, he played 3 different times during that period. He stayed with this woman, Evelyn Gold. And Evelyn would send my mother, you know, pack her up with all kind of goodies for me, you know, pictures of Elvis and autograph things. And in fact, my mother came home and said, well, Evelyn said, Maxine, you were on the phone all night last night, weren't you? And my mother said, I don't know. I was on the phone. Some why? And she said, because Elvis tried to call Ronnie all night and your phone was busy.
You never forget your mom.
Yeah, here I am still telling the story. That might give you some idea of it.
Well, you met him in what, was it 61 when they were shooting Follow That Dream up in North
60 or 61, yeah. When they were filming Follow That Dream. Yeah.
Was that through her that you got him?
No, in fact, she was long gone, or at least I hadn't seen her in years, but I figured out from Tribune articles that Elvis was going to be staying in Crystal River to film, you know, around that area. And there was only one real hotel around there then, Port Paradise. And so I can't even remember who took me up the first time, but I would get whoever was old enough to drive to take me to Crystal River.
Yeah.
So the first day we got there, and the sun had not come up yet, but we drove round and round the parking lot until we came to a lot of Cadillacs with Tennessee license plates. And well, there's a hint.
There you go.
Yeah, and sat there and waited. And as the sun started to come up, a door opened on one of the little cabins, and Elvis strolled out and, you know, just walked up to get into the car and stopped. And he was far too polite to walk away from people. Yeah, I mean, he. So that was the first time. It was just us. It was.
So he was like, "How you doing, boys?"
Yeah, I mean, you know, he just stood around and talked and signed things for us and made jokes and was just a really nice person.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You were what, like 12 or something then?
Yeah, I guess, let's see, 61. Yeah, I was like 13 or 14 years old.
Okay, but you picked up a guitar at some point yourself, like so many.
I had already picked up a guitar, and probably mostly because of Elvis. You know, all I wanted to do is play rock and roll. But honestly, Elvis and Little Richard and that whole Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, those guys were just such gods that I didn't consider, you know, that I could play rock and roll like that for a living. I thought maybe I could play instrumental versions of What I Say and Money all night and maybe make a bad living somewhere. But the Beatles changed all of that. You know, there were these 4 almost kids, and that's what changed it to, that was the real transition from the Elvis and idolizing these gods to a realistic thing and knowing what I was going to do with the rest of my life.
was, I want to show you a picture here, and I'm having terrible, I want to follow that. I want to follow that dream there a little bit, Ron. Okay, let's see if I got this. Yeah, try this. And I'm wondering if the Ray Vaughns was your first band.
Yes.
And Ray Vaughan is a Buddy Holly song, so
right.
Already you're cool.
Well, Buddy Holly was another huge hero, yeah.
This is you, what, 64? You got that Beatle haircut starting.
Yeah, that would have been at the end of 63 or the beginning of 64, yeah. That's in H&H Productions, a recording studio on, I think it was on Florida Avenue. It was either on Florida or Nebraska. Florida, I'm pretty sure.
H&H was pre-Fuller, sure.
Oh, yeah, it sure was. So
the Ray Vaughns, how did you get stuck playing bass? I mean, you know what I mean.
Well, that's what I always wanted to do. It was really the only thing I know how to do. I knew how to play guitar enough to, mess around and write and everything. But as soon as I was serious about playing, I played bass. That's the only thing that I ever learned properly. And that's debatable. It depends on who you ask, but it's
well, some of those Noah's Ark records and the later stuff. I was noticing how good the bass was. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But was rock and roll it for you? This is I got it. Like you said, I got to do this. Yeah,
I mean, even now, I still go through periods where I think, well, it's over. It came and went. It's like swing, or it's like something else that had its day and it went away.
Yeah.
But now with people trying to murder each other in Walmarts, to me, come on, rock and roll, save us again. Yeah, it changed everything for me. It made, in my opinion, it made war unfashionable for a whole generation. It just, it was more important than just the fun that it brought us.
Well, let me talk for a minute about the fun that it brought you, because you kept at it even. I love this picture. You're getting older. It's getting slightly more sophisticated. You're wearing matching suits. This, of course, is Tampa's Fabulous Outsiders, which also had Buddy Richardson in there playing guitar. This was before, I think, rock and roll had a social conscience. You were just garage bands playing cool music. And so what I wanted to ask you was, what was the earliest motivation for teenage garage bands? And it wasn't to change the world or protest things. Was it to look cool? Was it to get girls? Was it to make money? Or to get recognized and appreciated for your absolute untethered musical brilliance?
Absolutely, to pick up girls.
He's an honest man, folks.
Yeah, whatever is in second place was a long way back. I should add, however, that I never picked up a girl.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I have a very similar story. Mine was a different trajectory, but it never worked for me either. So
Spencer and I, the one in the foreground on the left, kind of leering into the camera in this shot.
Yeah,
he also never picked up a girl. I mean, that's the same reason that he was doing it. But the two of us, no. It's we had bad intentions, but nothing ever happened.
One of the things I really like about the two Outsiders singles, She's Coming On Stronger and the cover of Summertime Blues, is they're a little punk, they're a little dirty, and considering that we're talking 65 and 66, they're very much kind of more Rolling Stones than Beatles. And when bands like the Yardbirds started to happen, I can see that sort of influence there. I mean, was that intentional? Was it sort of like you weren't sort of doing dance steps and trying to look so pretty anymore?
We kind of, about this time when this photo was taken, we started to think of ourselves as hoodlums, as tough guys, We were not. Thinking of yourself as a hoodlum does not do much for you. That's it.
Well, of course, in the Outsiders, I don't want to use the word discovered because you were sort of there, but this is when our friend Phil Bernhardt comes into the picture for you. I've been preaching the gospel of what Phil Bernhardt did for music in Tampa Bay, as you know, for a couple of years now. But he basically was looking for bands to record. He had done the Tropics already and found you guys. What was that? What happened there?
Well, the Tropics 45 came out a month or two before ours did, but he found us in the Tropics at the same time.
Uh-huh.
He threw in with Margie and Dick Sexton.
Yeah.
And Margie was managing the Tropics and the Outsiders.
Mm-hmm.
So we were the first two bands that Phil worked with. And honestly, I think he had it in mind to just make some money while he was in law school. I don't think he really, in the very beginning, I don't think he was thinking about hit records yet, or not again. He had hit records when he was 18 years old.
Yeah, yeah. Famous story, folks.
Yeah.
But do you remember what he said to the Outsiders? Like, I like the way you sound. Can you dirty it up? Or I'm gonna make you famous, fellas. You know, what was the chuck and jive he gave you to make you sign something with it?
Well, it pretty quickly became, we're going to have hit records. What happened was that he decided that he was going to break off his relationship with Margie Sexton.
Yeah.
And he came to us and said, look, I'm not going to stay in business with Margie. And so I would like to take you guys, the Outsiders, and I will leave the Tropics with Margie, but I need to know that it's okay with you. And we said yes. And I got sent as the messenger to go give the news to Margie, and she locked me in her screened patio and wouldn't let me leave for some amount of time.
He hasn't spoken to you since, right?
Oh no, we're very close. It was, I mean, looking back, I don't blame her. You know, we had, just basically a handshake agreement.
Yeah.
But Margie had been very good to us and very sweet, and had been very good to Phil Bernhardt too. So
yeah.
it was kind of a slap in the face. It was a real slap in the face.
The Tropics went on to do some wonderful stuff too.
Yeah, Margie kept managing the Tropics and did a wonderful job with them, and they made great records. Yeah.
You were what, like students at Plant High School or something? Did you think we're going to get famous and blow this hot dog town? And what were you thinking in those days?
Listen, we were just out of high school at that time.
Okay.
In high school, we had thought we would pick up girls, and we've been through the success of that. So yes, right out of high school, we all went to college to keep from being drafted. And by that time, Phil was telling us, and Margie was telling the Tropics, yeah, you're getting ready to be rich and famous. And yes, we did believe that. That's it.
Okay, I got another picture for you. Let's talk about the Outsiders evolving into the Soul Trippers. Would you tell this story too? I love this story. You had to change the name. This is the same band. You've got your painted black hairdos here.
Yeah, the same band with a different singer. We had traded in singers, and this was downtown Tampa, by the way, behind what at the time was Kutro's Music, right between Tampa Street and what's the street that runs along by the library there. And
I'm a St. Pete guy. I don't know Tampa.
Oh yeah. Well, anyways, right downtown Tampa. And we were doing fairly well as the Outsiders. I mean, we were making pretty good money and starting to travel outside of the area. And the Outsiders from Cleveland put out that record on Capitol Records, Time Won't Let Me.
Right.
And we first were very upset about it. And Phil Bernhardt and the Schwartz brothers, Gene and Bob Schwartz, who own Lowry Records, we were on their record label.
Yeah.
They said, no, the record's terrible. It doesn't matter. It's going to go away right away. They said, we could get an injunction to stop this other band because you've been making your living as the Outsiders, but we don't have to do that because it's going to flop. And I think within 3 weeks, it was #2. It was a huge hit record. So the record label told us we had to change our name, and we didn't do it quickly enough. And they hired a PR firm in New York, and they named us the Soul Trippers. and we were just mortified.
Well, I was going to say, that's a pretty awful
It's like, well, this is the worst name ever. And of course, now it is so bad that I like it a lot. I mean, I think all of us, the three of us who are alive, love the idea of the Soul Trippers now. So.
But you cut on King Bee, which the Stones had done already, and the Slim
you
have a great story to go with this. Can you tell us about this? This is the only Soul Trippers record that ever came out that Gernhardt produced.
Yeah, it's the only one we recorded.
Tell us the King Bee story, because I love that.
Well, we wanted to do a Slim Harpo song, and King Bee was our favorite Slim Harpo song. I think it was the first record he made, in fact. And but Phil thought that it was a little bit risque for AM radio. I mean, that's the way Phil's thinking generally went. So he wrote wrote Slim Harpo, James Moore, who's living in Louisiana, and asked him if he would consider altering some lyrics for us to make a more radio-friendly song. And nothing came back for some period of time. So we went ahead and changed a few lyrics ourselves. And about the time we're getting ready to go in the studio, this long page after page handwritten letter came back from James Moore, Slim Harpo, to Phil, with just the dirtiest, most vile lyrics you can imagine. All, a very, very large script.
In other words, this is my answer to you.
Yeah, that was his answer. So, yeah.
Phil seemed to get responses like that from a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, he took great art like King Bee and wanted to make it, something for top 40 radio.
Hey man, but the Soul Trippers version, it's a cool record. And I have it here on a CD called Psychedelic State, Florida in the 60s. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of these records. She's Coming On Stronger is on one of these.
Yeah.
You can see that, folks. But I wish I could play them for you here, but we'd be here all night too. Check that record out. Listen, tell me about Noah's Ark, which is what came next for you.
Well, let's see. The Soul Trippers, it was kind of a meandering sort of thing. We broke up because of basically the draft situation. Mm-hmm. And Buddy Richardson and I then started Noah's Ark. And we quickly got Bobby Caldwell. He was, I think he was only 15. I don't think he was old enough to drive in the very beginning. He lived in Orlando. But we knew we wanted him to play drums.
Yeah, he's a great drummer.
Yeah. He's a magnificent drummer and just a really good guy. And so it was the three of us for a while. But when we took the first job that we took, somebody booked us as a quartet. So we quickly called Bill Mann and added him, and he did what he could to learn what songs we had. We went to play at the Comic Book Room in Jacksonville and spent a couple of weeks up there, the first job we played.
John Bromage was your producer, wasn't he? He was the engineer on with Gernhardt on the Royal Guardsman records.
Yeah, when Phil would not put out the records that we wanted to do, John Bromage swooped in and took the material to Decca Records and signed us. And then John produced the two singles that came out with Noah's Ark.
What's so interesting to me is that I Get All the Luck is kind of this rock and roll vaudeville thing. The B-side is absolute psychedelia, but the second single, Paperman, is like psych pop. It's almost like a Beatles song run through a sort of a magical mystery tour blender or something. I don't know. How's that for being metaphorical?
It would have been the actual recording that we did, Paperman. We did it at Decca Studios in New York.
Yeah,
would have been a record that all of us, I think, would have really liked. But the version that came out as a single was the way John Bromage edited it to make it 2.5 minutes or whatever it is. So there's probably a minute or so that's all psychedelic guitars in the middle of the song that didn't make it to the record. It's
one of those records that stands up even now. Slightly more than a curio. It's just a very cool record. Bobby Caldwell, of course, I'm going to tell the folks at home, went on to play with Johnny Winter and Rick Derringer and Captain Beyond, and is still around and still playing and still singing. Buddy Richardson, of course, started White Witch. Now, Buddy was with you in all these bands, wasn't he? You guys hung out for a long time.
Yeah, not in the Ray-Bons, but beginning with the Outsiders. Buddy and I did the Outsiders, the Soul Trippers, Noah's Ark.
Your next band, if my chronology it hasn't let me down, is called Your Local Bear. And
Yeah.
I have no idea. I think this is the band that was brief, and you opened for Hendrix, maybe at Curtis Dixon Hall.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, I left Noah's Ark because what we were doing sort of became what you were supposed to do. You know, psychedelic rock and roll was working. Cream and Jimi Hendrix and those kind of acts were coming along, and I just didn't feel the least bit creative anymore doing that stuff. You know, it felt like we were kind of in the middle of everything. So I quit Noah's Ark and tried to start a rhythm and blues band. And it was supposed to be like 10 or 12 pieces, and nobody would ever show up. You know, there would be 3 horn players not at a practice, and none of the girl singers were there, and then the keyboard player wouldn't be there. So I finally ended up with, from this whole group of people, 3 drummers and me, a bass player.
Wow.
So one of the drummers.
You're ahead of the times, though.
Well, I tried to start then just do a band with just drums and bass, and we laughed so hard all the way through every song we realized we couldn't do that either. So Spencer Hinkle is such a magnificent musician. He could play guitar just well enough to teach one of the other drummers to play guitar too. And so with the limitations built into that sort of thing, we became Your Local Bear. And the idea was we were a hillbilly band, a jug band. So at the height of psychedelia, I started the first country band I've ever started. And our first real show was to play with Jimi Hendrix at Curtis Dixon. Good timing. A real career move there. That was.
Yeah. Did they pelt you with garbage, or?
I think they were more confused than angry. I know one song that we did that Spencer and I had written. In fact, I still do it every now and then. It's called Country Music. And the hook of the song is country music is back on the radio. And of course it was not on the radio. It wasn't, they didn't even play country music on country music stations. Yeah. But we had planted a friend in the audience. And as we were singing, so country music's back on the radio, he came up crying on stage and grabbed the microphone to tell the audience how much he loved country music. So you can imagine how this went over with a Jimi Hendrix song. Yeah.
Okay. You did that, and then Hendrix came out and played the guitar with us. Yeah. And it's like, who were those hillbillies? So, hey, listen, did Your Local Bear kind of evolve into Duck Butter? Is that? Yeah. That was kind of the natural evolution there.
Yeah. It basically was the same sort of thing. Some people changed, and but that was.
Well, Duck Butter, I've told you that my brother, who had a radio show on WSF in those days, the band came in and you did a whole live set in the studio. He was a huge fan. And I'm slightly younger than you, Ronnie. And I remember thinking, I don't get this at all. But this is in the middle of, it's kind of organic post Robbie Robertson and the band getting back to basics. Rock and roll, psychedelia was already, but this country comedy stuff. Huh? What? Tell me about. I don't even know what to say about it. Duck Butter was unusual. Describe for the folks at home what it was.
Well, I mean, it wasn't altogether comedy. It would be there would be a funny song about all the girls at the Sadie Hawkins Day dance with sacks on their head, which was an attempt at comedy. And it would go right to a dog dying sad song, so it was just kind of all over the map. And Harry Hayward, the singer, he had originally been the drummer, and I had him moved to being the singer. And he's a magician also. So, between songs, or sometimes even the middle of a song, he would make something disappear or stick something up his nose, or, it was, so it was, unusual is right. It was, but it was to me, it was a really, really good rock and roll band.
And you had a huge following around here. I mean, this was, you and the early Outlaws were contemporaries. And I guess you actually played bass with the Outlaws briefly, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. That was just to facilitate some changes in the band. I was trying to produce them working for Phil. And they needed to make some personnel changes. And so they had me come in and play bass, and Frankie O'Keefe moved to rhythm guitar to change that around.
The thing about Duck Butter, it was reminding me kind of like Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show or something like that.
There were some real similarities. I mean, they weren't around when we started Duck Butter, but by the time they had hit records, there were some obvious comparisons, yeah.
And Duck Butter, we should point out also, for those millions of you who don't know, actually made one record. They made a single for Paramount Records in, what was it, 71, produced by Mr. Gernhardt.
Yes.
It's called Gospel Medley, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
It was kind of on the Norman Greenbaum Spirit in the Sky, Oh Happy Day, Hippies for Jesus era. And it was somewhat tongue-in-cheek, I always thought. But you didn't like it. It wasn't a hit. And you told me that you didn't really like that record. It didn't make stars out of the band.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to take the songs that were our favorite songs that we were writing and were the things that hit the audience best. And that's what we wanted to record. And Phil's idea was that we had too much potential to be big pop stars to get saddled with any kind of country sort of thing at all. And so we had put together this medley of gospel songs that we liked, and he decided, oh, there's your record. That's what we need to do. And we never wanted that to be the record at all.
Mr. Golden Ears.
Yeah, right.
Well, at a certain point, of course, Gernhardt left for LA and other things. And I want to we only have a couple of minutes left, and I want to kind of bring people up to date because there's a 30, 40-year gap there. You started making solo records, and you've got, what, 10 or 11 of them out now?
I guess, yeah, probably at least that. I don't know.
So at some point, and I know you had other bands over the years, but catch us up. I mean, what were you doing over those years? Did you have a job in, a corporate, were you a CEO that I don't know about or something like that for a while?
Well, actually, there were a lot of jobs. They weren't all CEO level jobs. I did run all of the offices for Smith & Associates, a real estate company, for a while. That was the closest to any CEO level. And then Bob Glasser and I started a mortgage company after that. So I was a president of a mortgage company for like 15 minutes too. But in between, I did all kind of things. I scooped mud out of the bottom of barges and swept floors and worked for the Environmental Protection Commission. I did a lot of different things. I always thought that rock and roll was behind me, that either I was too old for rock and roll or that rock and roll itself had died, or both. But it always turned out not to be the case.
No, and I want to point people not only to the stuff that you do at WMNF, which is, the stuff that you and Billy C. Wards do together is funny. And I love people who know early rhythm and blues and rock and roll so well that they can talk about it like second nature. And so Ronny, of course, is a familiar presence on WMNF, also a singer-songwriter who plays around a lot. But I also wanted to point people to your online blog, which is, sensitive and funny and topical and
violates Facebook's community standards, apparently, whatever that is.
Oh, did you get the boot from?
Yeah, if I put up a link to my blog, they take it down immediately.
Hey man, that's a mark of honor, isn't it? I mean,
it is now. I never had any feelings one way or the other about Facebook, and now I don't like them. It is, but I can take all of the words from my blog and paste it right there, and it stays up. So whatever I do that violates their community standards is a mystery to me. And anyway, I still blog all the time.
Yeah, it's a wonderful read. You can Google it. It's just Blogspot, Ronny Elliott or something like that.
Ronny Elliott's blog, I think.
Well, yeah. Ronny, absolute pleasure to talk to you as always.
It's always great to talk to you.
And man, I gotta tell the folks at home that there's a book out. It's called Phil Bernhard Record Man that I wrote. And this is how I met Ronnie, because I was researching Mr. Bernhard. He did some amazing and terrible things all in a big blender. And that's all. You want to take us out with another tune? You got something else for us?
Yeah. I'm thinking that in that original bunch, we're down to one now with the loss of Little Richard, or 1.5. We've got Jerry Lee Lewis and Don Everly. So it's a,
oh yeah. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Be soon, brother.
On the road trying to make a few bucks. It's not like the old days. A lot of miles and not many big hits since he and Myra parted ways. He's still mean as a snake, smart as a fox. He still plays like his soul's possessed. He's asleep next door, passed out on the floor. It's time to get him sober and dressed. Somebody go wake up Jerry Lee. Get that hillbilly out of the bed. Willie looks you right in the eye and tell the killer the king is dead. There'll be another show tonight and a whole lot of shaking, maybe a few hillbilly tunes. Whether he knocks them dead and leaves them yelling for more depends on pills and liquor consumed. There'll be a hole in his heart and the tears will start when the lights go black. The king is gone, he's taking his songs and he's not coming back. Somebody go wake up Jerry Lee. Get that hillbilly out of the bed. Willie looks you right in the eye and tell the killer the king is dead. Oh man, we started the whole thing, didn't we? We made sunshine bright from that hole in the wall in Memphis, Tennessee. Stop and think, and pour him a drink and sit him up in bed. Give him the word, tell him what we just heard. Tell him Elvis Presley's dead. Somebody go wake up Jerry Lee Lewis. Get that damn hillbilly out of the bed. Really looks you right in the eye and tell the killer the king is dead.
Good night, Ronnie. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.